as much as he assured Kenyans that the economy is on an upward trend, to me it is not. Because you see, when there is over-borrowing on domestic market, the rates go up, prices on essential commodities go up. You have seen prices on petrol products going up. This means an ordinary Kenyan cannot be able to meet his basic requirements.
The president must also address the question of youth unemployment. What is the government's agenda for the youth? Do the people in government recognize that Kenya is sitting on a time bomb? Today, there are about 8.5 million unemployed or underemployed young people out there. Does this government care about them? If it does, what is it doing about them? How many young people would the hundreds of billions that have been looted keep in gainful employment?
Okay, so Musalam Davidi and Tuoli, just talking about the issue of unemployment, the issue of corruption, and the conversation you're having this evening on the big story is Kenya heading in the right direction? And we are doing this with Bishop David Oginde, who's the presiding bishop at CTAM. We also have Professor Alfred Omenya, who's the development policy expert. Bishop, allow me to just pick your mind as a religious leader. And even in biblical times, we had leaders who would show their people the way. 26% of Kenyans believe Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the president, is responsible for the wrong path Kenya is taking. 15% of Kenyans blamed all political leaders for the wrong path. 11% directly said Uhuru and Ruto should be held responsible. I would like you to talk to the country about the direction the country is taking, but then at the same time look at the role of leaders, because ultimately we have leaders who are supposed to steer Kenya in the right direction. At what point did the rain start beating the Republic of Kenya? And as a leader, how do we get back on the right track?
Thank you, Linda. The very word leadership or leader implies that somebody is ahead and others are following. And that person knows where we ought to be going and is taking us there. Now, the one thing that is critical about leadership is vision. Vision means that if you're a driver, you keep your eyes on the road and you ensure that we are headed in the right direction. As I said before the break, I think we have a problem in the sense that whereas there may be a great vision as to where this country should go, and our leaders at least appear like they would want to take us there, there are too many issues that are distracting them so that they are not able to take us to where we ought to go. And when people are distracted, no matter how good a leader you can be, you will not be able to get us there. If a driver is not keeping his eyes on the road, you are likely to have an accident. And my thinking is that where we are as a nation right now, there are too many things that are distracting our leaders. They are engaged in these battles, and unfortunately the politics of the day is so toxic that our leader, the president, deputy president, and others who are supposed to steer us in the right direction seem to be too engaged with these side shows and side issues that they are not able to take us in the right direction. And I think this is what is causing our nation not to move at the pace that was anticipated and which Kenyans really wanted to, or rather expected of the government. And so, yes, as the spokesman said earlier, they may be focused in where they ought to go, but with all these distractions, unless they, like I said, if there's a puncture, what you do is you stop, you repair the puncture, and then you move on. You cannot pretend that there's nothing happening and then keep going. The vehicle will be more damaged. And so my thinking is that the leadership needs to stop, look at where we are, and take a very honest evaluation of the situation, make repairs and do what is necessary so that we can get back on track. This country has the potential of growing at 10 or 12%. if we focus ourselves and we give everybody the opportunity to move forward. The issue of corruption is something that needs to be dealt with. It is very sad. This is many years since the Golden Bug to today, we have been talking about corruption. As of today, there is no big corruption case that has been successfully prosecuted. What that tells the people is that it is not worthwhile to work. Simply get easy money, find a place where you can steal, and you can go forward. So how do you get to work hard as an individual of citizen of this country when the labors and the efforts that you put in are going to be squandered by people who are going to steal it? As a taxpayer, I feel the pain that 30%, up to 30% of my salary, of my income is taken by government, and then it is stolen. It is not used for the purposes for which it is meant. How can anybody then work hard in that kind of environment? I think government needs to come out strong and deal with the issue of corruption.
Bishop?
Yes.
So let me ask you, let's work with the puncture story.
Right.
So you're a driver and you have a puncture and you
Yes.
try fixing it and it's not working. So you have to get a mechanic to sort of fix it for you. And by alluding to that, I am talking about the church. And I'll put you a little bit on the spot because this conversation has also been, but where is the church in all this? A lot is going on in this country. The church, the voice of the church is not as audible as we would want it to be. The church should be the alternative leadership for the country. It's not.
The church is not the leader of the country. The church plays what we call a prophetic role. We point out when there's a problem. We pray for the nation to have peace and everything.
How often do you point out when there's a problem?
Oh, this is like a song now, unless you have not been listening. The issues
Maybe it's not loud enough.
Let's talk about corruption, for example.
Yeah.
We are getting tired of singing. In fact, for me, yesterday when I read in the newspapers about, I think, 150 billion or something, I thought, why do we report these things? Why should we report these things? Because nobody is going to do anything about them. Let people steal if they want, because this country, talking does not seem to do anything. Even if the church came today and made the noise that we have been making, it seems nobody seems to care. So that we are in a situation where we get the leaders that we deserve. We have elected these leaders ourselves. They steal our money. There's nothing we can do about it. The president came out very strongly, and we came out and supported him and said, indeed, this is the right direction. When he came out to fight corruption, we had an anti-corruption conference at Bomas. I was one of the people who was facilitating that process. Surely, we expected that something would come out of that. Why should the church still come out and speak about things that are already being said?
Corruption is one of them. There are several other issues that perhaps the church should be loud enough about.
We have been talking about the fights in government. Because one of the things that God has called us to do as a Christian community is that we should pray for the peace of the nation. That is clearly stated in the Bible. And so ours is a concern for peace. You remember when there was the stalemate between ODM and NASA and Jubilee. The church literally stopped. We were doing nothing other than trying to make sure that this situation is resolved. We spoke almost on a daily basis. We tried our best together with others to try and bring these people together. We were very happy when the handshake took place because we knew now we can get back to work because peace has come into the nation. But it seems to us that our politicians, the only thing they enjoy is playing politics. So that when that situation then came in, we started in a different path.
Okay.
And we are putting the church like a cattle shepherd, you know, that is supposed to be all the time bringing these people back on the path. That is really not our job.
Okay, it may not be your job, but trust me, a lot of people look up to you guys to do that and fix this country. Professor, the bishop says their work is to pray for peace in the nation. After the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, there was a little bit of hope in the country that perhaps this country is now headed in the right direction. Over a year after that handshake, these poll results are released and guys are saying, I mean, this country is not heading in the right direction. So with the handshake in place and every effort that has been put to bring peace to the country, we're still not moving anywhere. So as we wrap up this show, short-term solution, long-term solution, we clearly are agreeing that perhaps the country is not heading in the right direction. Perhaps it's time to reverse and look for the right path. How do you get to that right path?
Yes, I think we have a leadership crisis, as Bishop has said. I would bring in another analogy that, you know, your house is burning. I know Bishop and I have a background in architecture. So if your house is burning, what do you do? Do you go to consult an architect to start drawing the house, you know, that you want to build and all those wonderful things? No, really. I mean, you put off the fire. And then, of course, if you're not happy with your house, then, you know, you go and plan. So we need two things. Number one, we need the government of the day to be able to understand the crisis Kenyans are in. The government of the day must understand these urgent issues. The youths have no jobs. There is need for something to be done immediately so that at least there is reprieve to this huge segment of the population. Ordinary Kenyans, the private sector, cannot get credit for their businesses. Something needs to be done almost immediately to ensure that this, you know, that credit is available. We cannot be competing with our government, you know, borrowing from all over the place. We know that our debt issue in this country is not sustainable. We need to actually have a national debt conference. We need to have specialists since Parliament and government has actually failed. So we need to deal with some of these very urgent issues. Yes, we appreciate this peace, but we must go beyond that. Secondly, in the long term, what you're talking about here is really collapse of governance, collapse of leadership, and by extension, collapse of institutions. Starting with the executive. What is the executive doing? What are the plans of the executive? How are these plans being monitored and so on? And we do have examples of how, you know, these are actually meant to work. We are looking at Parliament, again, where people just go for holidays. You saw the way the budget was done and the holes that were in the budget and the thinking around it. I wonder why I had a member of Parliament in the first instance. They don't even know, many don't even know that that's their core role. The government borrowing, I mean, again, that is something that is meant to be pushed for by Parliament. Some of these policies we're talking about are policies that are meant to be done by Parliament. The last time I heard of majority leaders speaking in Parliament, he was speaking about insulting Tanzanians. Yeah, so you really wonder, Parliament is not functioning actually. The executive is not functioning. They're leaderless and they're rudderless. Okay. The politicians are busy playing politics instead of governing the country. We've already elected them. I don't know what election they're running for. And long term, we actually need a leadership that can actually streamline, you know, our policies and implement them actually from government to government. But this is not happening.
Professor, so let me ask you, is it that leaders in the country are grappling in the dark and they have no idea where they're going? Or is it that we are a country that know where we are supposed to go and you have just refused to go that direction?
Thank you. I think in fact, we are a country that was going somewhere, and we knew the direction. I mean, as a country, we had these policies in place. We have Vision 2030. We have medium-term plans. We had, in fact, for the first time, Kenya actually had a national spatial plan that was very clear in terms of how we're going to develop the north of the country, how we're going to develop the south of the country. What's happening actually is that the leadership has just abandoned their role. I keep talking about an absent government. I keep talking about a government that abstains. In fact, the problem we have is thieves posing as leaders. We have got kleptocrats. That's why we have issues of corruption. Who is this money that people are hiding in their houses? Where did it come from? That money came from Treasury. It was actually paid from government coffers. It was paid. It was sanctioned by Rotich. The cabinet sits every 2 weeks in Ministerial Tender Committee approving tenders. That's where this corruption is coming from. So we actually have a government that has absconded on its role, starting with the president. And then what do? You externalize this thing to other agencies. What would I do if somebody was stealing in my organization? The first thing I would do would be to ask this person to step aside. Has the president done that? No. So DCI and anti-corruption will not deal with these issues.
Okay.
My point is that those who are governing Kenya, those who are in power, should come and do their job. That is what you elected them to do. In fact, if they just woke up in the morning and did 8 hours of work or even 6 hours of work, this country would be much better. But what are they doing? They're trying to kill each other. They're preaching every day against each other. They've divided themselves in Kieleweke and Tanga and all sorts of things, and just creating nausea in this country as they keep imagining that you'll be able to grow the economy by overtaxing people and over-borrowing both internally and from the Chinese. We just need to style up. We need some leadership, actually. The country is in a leadership crisis. Okay. We need to actually have some leadership in this country.
So the country is in a leadership crisis. Bishop Oginde, as an elder in the society, is a man who leads an entire team at CITAM and a man who is walking the path of God. I would like you to have the final word in this conversation in terms of the direction this country is heading and how do we now get it right?
For me, where I sit, and sometimes it's easier to say things from the stalls than in the field.
Yeah.
But from where I sit,
yeah,
the issues are just two. Let's have a ceasefire within government so that people can concentrate on building the nation. If we can have a ceasefire, whatever that will take, whatever it requires, I think the president, together with his team, they know what to do so that that ceasefire is attained. That will give Kenyans an environment within which they can work, they can do their job without the fear of uncertainty. Okay. The worst thing that an investor wants to do is to come into a place where it looks like people are at war. So even the people who externally or internally who would want to invest in the country are holding back because they don't know where the country may be going. Okay. And so if there's ceasefire, that will in itself send a very good message that would then help people to get back into economic development. The second thing is deal with corruption. Let's not talk about corruption. Let's deal with it. And I do not know where the problem lies, whether it lies in the investigative arms of government, whether it lies in the judiciary, or wherever it is, but there seems to be no will at all to deal with corruption decisively. It cannot be that for years we have never successfully prosecuted any corruption. If we deal with these two things, to me, I think Kenya will fly, not just run.
All right, Bishop Oginde, one, we just need a ceasefire within government. I mean, on one hand, you have cabinet secretaries being accused of planning an assassination against number 2 in government, Deputy President William Ruto. Over the weekend, you have political leaders throwing words left, right, center, and Kenya's caught right in between. So he says we need a ceasefire within the government, and we need someone to deal with corruption. It starts from the head. So those are the two recommendations that he's giving. Gentlemen, thank you so much for speaking to us and for being part of this conversation this evening. Bishop David Oginde, presiding bishop at CITAM. Big thank you for your time and for just sharing your thoughts on the direction the country is taking. A big thank you as well to Professor Alfred Omenya, who's a development policy expert. He says, there's so many things wrong in this country. We're on the wrong direction. The sooner we start fixing it, the better. And a big thank you as well to retired Colonel Cyrus Oguna, government spokesperson, who spoke to our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna. This has been The Big Story. I'm Linda Ogutu. Have a good night.